Have you ever walked away from a short conversation barely 10 minutes long feeling like someone just reached into your chest and pulled out your energy? No argument, no conflict. Just words, small talk, a quick interaction. And yet, you feel tired, drained, like you need to rest or be alone for a long time. Why does that happen? Today, we explore the deeper reason through the lens of Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology. This isn't just about being introverted. It's about your psychic energy, your shadow self, your persona, and the people who unknowingly awaken something buried within you. Let's go deeper. Carl Jung believed that each of us possesses a finite amount of psychic energy. This is not physical stamina. This is the energy of the psyche, your mind, your emotions, your inner world. Every decision you make, every mask you wear, every feeling you suppress draws from this energy. Now, when you're talking to someone, especially someone who triggers unconscious parts of you, you're not just exchanging words. You're spending energy managing internal reactions you may not even be aware of. It's not always about the topic of conversation. Sometimes it's the role you're forced to play. Sometimes it's the silence between the words. And often it's the unseen emotional labor of staying polite when your soul wants distance. Jung said that we all wear a persona. It's the social mask we present to the world. When you're at work, you have a persona. When you talk to your parents, another. When you're on a date, another. And sometimes, even with friends or strangers, you're still wearing something. Now imagine this. The conversation lasted just 10 minutes. But during those 10 minutes, you had to perform, smile, pretend, adjust. Maybe the person was loud and you had to act more energetic. Maybe they were too quiet and you felt the pressure to fill the silence. Maybe they were critical and you smiled just to avoid tension. Each time your true self differs from your persona, it costs energy. The further the gap between who you are and who you're pretending to be, the more energy it drains. You don't even realize it, but your nervous system does. Jung also introduced the concept of the shadow self. This is the part of you that holds all the things you've rejected or repressed, your insecurities, your envy, your anger, your shame. Here's the interesting part. Some people, just by being themselves, activate your shadow. You don't even realize it, but you're comparing, or defending, or feeling small, or annoyed. And instead of confronting those buried feelings, you push them deeper because society taught you to be mature, to rise above it. But repressing emotion takes more energy than expressing it. That 10-minute conversation may have poked wounds you've hidden for years. And when it ends, you feel that ache, that exhaustion, that internal chaos you can't name. It's not because you're weak. It's because you've spent emotional energy trying to hold yourself together. Carl Jung also helped popularize the idea of introversion and extraversion not as social behaviors but as orientations of energy. Extroverts gain energy from outer stimuli, people, activity, excitement. Introverts regain energy from the inner world, solitude, reflection, imagination. Now ask yourself honestly, are you someone who spends too much time in extraverted environments, calls, chats, meetings without enough time to go inward? That 10-minute conversation might not have seemed like much, but if you're already emotionally overstimulated, it can feel like a final blow. Your energy is being pulled outward all day. And even short conversations begin to feel like psychic taxation. You need silence, but the world is noise. You need stillness, but life keeps moving. In Jungian psychology, we all carry complexes, clusters of emotions, memories, and thoughts organized around a theme, often formed in childhood. Let's say you have an abandonment complex. Now, you meet someone who casually says something like, "You're too sensitive," or "You think too much." That 10-second comment reactivates the pain of being misunderstood as a child. You don't consciously think about it. But your body remembers. You shrink a little. You defend yourself internally. You doubt your worth. All of that happens in seconds, and when the conversation ends, you feel like you've been in a storm. The human brain reacts to emotional triggers the same way it reacts to real danger. You're not exhausted because the conversation was intense. You're exhausted because it reopened a wound you forgot you had. Jung also believed in synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that reflect a connection between the inner and outer world. Sometimes the people we talk to carry an unconscious resemblance to someone from our past. A person's voice might sound like your old teacher. Their body language might remind you of your absent father. Their tone might echo your critical ex. Without realizing it, your mind starts to defend itself against an old enemy. In a new form, you are fighting ghosts with a smile. You are managing trauma while asking, "How was your day?" And when it's over, you feel empty. Sometimes you're exhausted after a conversation because deep down you betrayed yourself. You agreed when you should have disagreed. You smiled when you should have been silent. You stayed when you should have walked away. Self-betrayal is invisible but devastating. Each time you swallow your truth to keep the peace, you rob your spirit of oxygen. You become likable on the outside and resentful on the inside. The exhaustion you feel, that's your soul grieving its own silencing. Jung didn't just teach us how the mind breaks, he also showed us how it heals. And one of the greatest forms of healing is the creation of boundaries. Not just physical or verbal boundaries, but inner boundaries. Being aware of when someone is draining your energy, not because they're evil, but because they're misaligned with your spirit. Recognizing that not all connection is good for you. Understanding that you don't owe your presence to every smile. You're allowed to protect your psychic energy the way you protect your body. You're allowed to walk away from small talk that feels loud. You're allowed to choose stillness over stimulation. That is not weakness, that is wisdom. If you're naturally empathetic, there's another layer. You don't just listen to people, you feel them. You absorb their tone, their fear, their frustration, even their hidden grief. Jung would describe this as a projection issue. The other person is projecting something into you. And you, because you're open, receive it. But receiving doesn't mean you have to keep it. You must learn how to let go of emotions that are not yours. You're not tired because you're fragile. You're tired because you became the emotional landfill for everyone else's unprocessed energy. In Jungian psychology, individuation is the process of becoming who you truly are, separate from societal roles and expectations. But this process doesn't happen in crowds. It happens in silence. When you are alone, your psyche heals. It processes, digests, integrates. It makes sense of all the noise you couldn't understand while it was happening. So, if you need to disappear for a while after a conversation, if you need to lie down, to take a walk, to journal or cry or sit in the dark, you're not crazy. You're a soul returning to itself. So, why do you feel exhausted after a 10-minute conversation? Because you're not just having a chat. You're managing energy, performing roles, defending boundaries, absorbing emotion, battling past wounds, and suppressing reactions. All of it happens so fast, you don't even notice, but your soul does. So, the next time you feel tired after a conversation, don't just ask, "What's wrong with me?" Ask, "What mask did I wear? What wound did they touch? What truth did I silence? What energy did I absorb? And what part of me needs rest, not judgment?"